Easter's a difficult day. You have all the somberness, some of that song spoke about, and then you have so much to celebrate. And how do you do both? Well, we're going to, in a different way, address that today. Welcome to Waypoint. I'm glad you're here celebrating Easter with us. I think this is the day for the Christian church. This is everything for us. So if you're here, if you're visiting with us, I'm glad you're here. I hope somebody from Waypoint will introduce themselves to you. Waypoint, there's a good chance to be good hosts and say hi to some people and just be friendly. I think that would be an excellent thing for us to do this morning. So glad you're here. Here's where I want to start. Every quarter at Waypoint, the staff assigns themselves goals to accomplish. So they have 3 months to accomplish the goal, and the goals are intended to help us accomplish either 1 month or 3-year goals that we have set for the organization. We found this really helpful to make sure that we're actually doing things that are helpful for us. And so we go over these goals, we agree to them, and then in meetings, we're held accountable for them. Well, this last quarter, a goal showed up on my sheet that I didn't choose. It just had my name on it. And I was like, okay. And then the month of January, I was asked every week, are you on track with this goal? And I said, yes. I hadn't looked at it at all. I hadn't touched it, but I thought, I have enough time. I'm not really worried about it. But what I started noticing was that the staff started laughing and snickering every time I said I was on track, as if to communicate, we know you're not going to do this goal, which irritated me a little. And I decided that I was going to accomplish that goal at the last possible second. They were going to never see it coming. I was going to wait 2 months, 3 weeks, and 6 days, and then like magic. Gotcha. In retrospect, I may have become more committed to the secondary goal than the primary goal, okay? So that could be a problem. The goal that I was asked to accomplish was this. We want you to write down the history of Waypoint. I like history. If there was a historical documentary, I'd watch it. I read history books. If there's an article on archaeology in Israel, I read the whole thing. Fascinated by that kind of stuff. But I'm a consumer. I'm a consumer of history, and they were asking me to produce something, and that really, I've done that in the past for little parts of Waypoint story, and I thought there was a good reason for those when I did it. I wasn't sure if having a goal assigned to me was a very good reason, and that's probably what the staff picked up on. They picked up on that maybe I didn't think this was a very good reason to do this. And that didn't matter anymore. I was going to get it done. So I started trying to figure out everything that I would have to have in order. I remembered things, but I couldn't even remember the year they happened in. So I'm going through old emails. I'm figuring out timelines. I'm getting all this stuff done so that on the last possible second, I can get this assignment done. Now, one of the reasons, I didn't realize this at the time, but one of the reasons I was asked to do that goal is April of 2025 is Waypoint's 20th anniversary. We've been around for 20 years. Can you believe that? I missed the first 2. A lot of really important things happened during those first 2 years, but I was around for the rest of those. And as I started to remember all the stuff that went on over the years, I came to the conclusion that God has been really good to us. God's been really good to our community through us. There have been a lot of lives that have been touched. And I came to this conclusion. I don't think God has just been with us. I think God has been leading us. There's been some crazy things that have happened over the years, and they weren't crazy just for crazy sake. Like more ministry happened, more people were engaged. There was stuff that came out of that crazy that I was able to reflect on. And I started to feel really blessed. I started to feel like God had done some things for us that we should just be full of gratefulness for. But something else happened in that process that I wasn't counting on, that I wasn't looking for, and that frankly I wasn't enjoying at the time when it happened. As I started to remember all the good things that God had been doing, all the bad stuff came up too. Like all the difficult moments, all the hard things, they were part of this too. Sometimes when you look at a ministry and where it is in this, like today, you can think, well, it's always been like this. No, it has not. I remember that we used to office in this kids' room down here. All the staff were in one room around white tables, and we tore the white tables down and put them away every week. And we did that for 18 months to 2 years. That was an office. I remember this. I remember that can we bring up the picture of the copiers? This is fantastic. This used to be the copier of Waypoint. It was a brother copier, and I know why it has that name. When you would hit print, the next thing that would cross your mind is, oh, brother, I wonder how long this is going to take. That's why they named it. I'm sure of it. You would go and stand there because it would receive the information. It had to think about it. Then it had to warm up. And then it would give you a page. Right? I'm not making it up. That's how it would go. And we struggled over whether we should spend $1,000 on a printer or not because we were in a financial position at that time where everything was strained, and we thought, if we do this, are we going to put ourselves in a difficult place? We got that printer. I love this printer. The first day I hit print, I walked over to it, and the pages were there waiting for me, and I thought, my life has changed. I was so happy. I didn't kiss it, but I thought about it. But that's the kind of stuff, like, those were the days that we were living in. I remembered difficult things that we went through with staffing, things that I'd never thought I would have to deal with or want to deal with, and I had to make difficult choices. I was surprised to find out that Waypoint was a cult, and I was a cult leader. There was some gossip going around from other churches, and I was like, wow, they don't know me very well. I would be a very terrible cult leader. I hate rules, right? Nick will come up with these things, and I'm like, Nick, we got to have an exception to that. He goes, we can't have an exception to every rule. Can I have an exception to that one? If we can just do that, right? It's a problem. But you remember all of these kind of difficult things. Can I tell you, I liked writing down the good. I was enjoying that process. But I found the bad were just intermingled with it. I wrote down this one memory, and then I remembered that we lost $50,000 on our first parking lot that we ever put in. We paid a contractor to do the job, and it ended up being like a whole series of speed bumps. If you drove fast through our parking lot, you had no car. Like it was going to be destroyed. That's how bad it was. And each of the contractors involved said it's their fault, their fault, their fault. Nobody would take responsibility. And so we ate $50,000. And I had to stand in front of the congregation and say, I got nothing to show for this, and I'm sorry, and I don't know what to do. And I was sick in my gut for a long time over that. And I remembered that. I preferred the good. I preferred remembering that over the years, Waypoint's averaged about 20 baptisms a year. I love that. It's a place where people have come and their lives have been changed. I remember that we've given away hundreds of thousands of food into our community for people who need to eat. I remember that we serve in our community and in our nation, and we've actually gone around the world to help people who are in need. We've done those kinds of things. And it excited me to write all of that stuff down. Love the good, but the hard and the difficult. What I've come to understand is that sometimes the hard and difficult make the sweet even sweeter. In fact, sometimes the hard and difficult is why something was sweet in the first place. God needed to do something to overcome this place that we were at the end of our rope. We didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't have a plan. And God had an answer. And it was clear that God had the answer because it was nothing that we could have orchestrated. It's that sort of thing. I think remembering is good. I think remembering is good. In fact, today, after the service, I'm going to ask you to stay for a little bit and just remember our 20th anniversary. We're going to have cake pops and ice cream in the Lookout Hall. Yeah. I know you're going to go eat some ham. I'm asking you to eat dessert before you eat your ham, right? And I know what you're thinking. Sounds like something a cult would do. No, it's not. No, we're just breaking the rules. This is my style. That's all that's going on here. So when you go out there, you're going to find some stuff and just celebrate, and that'll be great. We have another announcement that we'll give you at the end of the service, and that'll be exciting. I'm convinced that remembering is good. Remembering is good. It comes with lots of pieces of the pie. It's not just the good. In fact, if you were part of the Easter story, remembering the Easter story would have been a very difficult process for you because you just had a really bad week. In fact, when you look at the Easter story, there's not much good to report until the end of the story, when the end of the story changes everything else, flips it all on its head. That's the part that I want to start with. I want you to see this. It goes from sad to victory. In Matthew 28, women are heading to the tomb. They're going to put spices on the body of Jesus. That was the custom of the day. It helped with the smell of a decomposing body. This was just part of the process. Nothing on their mind that they were going to find anything out of the order except a body in a tomb. And they come upon an angel. In verse 5, this is what happens. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified." He's not telling them anything different than they know. They had watched him die on the cross. They had watched him taken down from the cross. They knew where he was buried. They obviously knew where to go. They'd watched their Savior die like a criminal. But the story's about to change. The angel says in verse 6, "He is not here. He has risen." And then he throws this in for good measure. "Just as he said." I love that part. You know, he told you that this was going to happen. I know you guys are acting surprised right now, but he's been leaving breadcrumbs all along the path. You should have figured out that this was how this is going to turn out. And then the last part of the verse, I love it. "Come and see the place where he lay." He's giving tours. Like, it's very Spartan in here. But this is the bed. This is the linen that he's folded up nicely. Look, this is where he used to lay. Those words right there are what the whole of Christian faith is founded on. He used to lay here. Everything changed in that moment. The realization that he is no longer dead, that he beat death, validated everything that he had ever taught. It validated everything that he had ever asked for from his disciples. He asked for devotion, he asked for love, he asked for sacrifice, he asked for obedience, validated all of that. Do you understand that for the last 3 days before this happened, all the disciples have are doubts? That's all they're left with. Do you know the job of a disciple? The job of a disciple was to learn everything that rabbi would teach them so that when the rabbi died, they would keep teaching all of that kind of stuff. And it wouldn't be lost to the world. And you know what their thought had to be? If we teach what he taught, are we going to end up the way he did? And these guys were done. It indicates in the scriptures that they were considering going back to fishing. They eventually did. They didn't want the same fate. They knew what was going on, and they were out. If you've been to a funeral, maybe some of you are young, you haven't been to a funeral yet. I'll tell you one of the things that happens at a funeral. People tell stories. They'll tell a funny story that will remind everybody of somebody's personality, and everybody will kind of laugh and enjoy that kind of moment. Somebody will tell a story that reminds you of their character, and you'll feel a little sad that you're going to lose out on that character being around your life. But people tell stories, and the stories fill the room, and they're very healing, and they're very helpful. I think for the last 3 days, the disciples have sat in silence. They're going to tell a funny story of the way this all turned out. I'm not sure they can even tell a sad story at this point, because they had responded and reacted in a way where they left Jesus in a lurch. That's what they chose to do. They abandoned him in the garden. They denied him to his face. They heard a crowd chanting, "Crucify him," and said nothing to change it. They allowed a stranger to put a cross on his back and carry it for Jesus through Jerusalem. They didn't even show up to take him down off the cross. These guys have been hiding and are in denial, and that's the last week of their story. They're not telling funny stories. I think they're full of questions. I thought he was the Son of God. Can you kill the Son of God? Is he the Messiah or wasn't he? What do we do with all these miracles that we saw? Those were real, right? Did we get fooled? Are we fools? They have all of these doubts that are churning around in their mind. Fresh on their minds are the horrible week they just had. Fresh are their personal failures that have added to that horrible week. And you know the bad thing? They can't do anything about changing that story. That will be their story for the rest of their lives. They're going to remember the betrayal. They're going to remember the denial. They're going to remember how they fled. They're going to remember how they hid. But something happened in the lives of those men that changed everything. Something happened that caused them to overcome the failure that they were feeling. Something happened for the betrayal. Something happened that caused them to stop disengaging and hiding. And you want to know what it was? This is where he used to lay. He's not here anymore. And because he's not here anymore, you have an opportunity to have a different kind of life. And they ran into something bigger than the story that they had that was going to redefine theirs. The story of Jesus. Man, they had these bad moments. But the story of Jesus was going to become so dominant in their lives that the bad story that they could tell was almost going to become meaningless. I wonder how long it took them to figure out that the bad part of their story only made the sweet sweeter. By the way, they did figure it out. I want to put a slide up that shows you what happened in the lives of the disciples. If you can put up the martyr slide, that would be awesome. Let's see. Matthias down here was added to the disciples after Judas left, and he even died. So if you count him, 11 out of 12. 11 out of 12 of these guys died for the message of Jesus being carried to people. This is not a group of people who are sitting in their stories of failure, in their stories of I blew it, in their stories of betrayal. These guys aren't hiding. They're out there dying. And you know what did it? Story of Jesus. Come back to life, offered them forgiveness, and they took it. They were forgiven. They were renewed. They were restored. They were put in right standing with Him again, and they became courageous. Why is this important? It's important for you to understand what's happened in their story, because this is exactly what Easter is supposed to do for your story. See, if I were to query the room, I would find out that all of you have some garbage in your past. All of you. You've said stuff you wish you hadn't have said. You've done stuff. You were selfish. You cared about status. You put yourself ahead of somebody else. Like you could look at your life and go, I messed up big. And the problem with memories is that they don't go away. It's your story. It's going to be your story for the rest of your life. But something dramatic happens. Something dramatic happens. God comes along and says, listen, because I love you, I'll forgive you. I'll make my forgiveness the central part of your whole story. So that when you remember what's bad, you actually remember how good I've been to you. That I'm bigger than your story. I'm bigger than that terrible failure that you had. You're forgiven. So forgiven that I've actually forgotten what you're talking about. It's not even on my mind. This is the kind of forgiveness that God offers to His people. Like if you want to accept that kind of gift, then you end up with a different life. A life that's full of courage and hope. You're drawn to something that God wants to do through you and with you. And your story no longer matters. His story matters. Why? Because He used to lay there, but He's not anymore. And because He came back to life, He can give you life. Past your failure, despite your failure. Doesn't care. Like He paid for that. Will you move past it? That's the question. Will you allow Easter to be that kind of moment for you? Band, if you can come up here, we're going to need you to help us in a minute. I think memories, based on my experience, you can go and try to remember only the good, but your memories have a way of stirring up both. You'll remember the good and the bad. You remember your failures. You'll remember moments where you just kind of blew it. I don't understand people who tell me I've lived my life with no regret. I'm not there. There are plenty of things I wish I hadn't said, plenty of things I wish I hadn't done, times where I tried to angle it so I would look a certain way and seem better than I was. I've lied to give myself an advantage. Like I've done these things, and I regret them. I've also faced some difficulties in life that if you would ask me, I would go without those. I would go past them. I would find some way to not let that happen so I wouldn't have to face that really mountainous time in my life that was hard. But I've come to realize that all of those things, for me, are just reminders of how good God has been. Disciples had a horrible week. Instead of it changing their lives for the worse, it became reminders to them of how good God is. My friends, He is doing the same for you. In fact, the only people who risk not experiencing that kind of hope, that kind of life, are people who say, free gift of God, I'm going to do this my way. I don't care about what God says. I don't care about what He wants for my life. It's what I want. That's what I'm going to do. Well, you're going to live with your regrets. You're going to live with your pains. You're going to live with your difficulties. And it's just going to be you and those things. And I wonder why you would want to do that. When there is somebody who would go to a cross for you, bury your sins, and come back to life and offer you life. You understand, your worst moments could be reminders of how good God is. They don't hold you. They don't capture you. They don't define you. That's what God offers. And it's as simple as reaching out and saying, God, if that's what you're offering, if you're offering life, if you're offering hope, if you're offering the worst days of my life will be reminders of how good you are, I'm in. You just have to tell Him, I'm sorry for the junk that I've piled up. I'm going to choose you. I'm going to do what you want. I'm going to follow you with my life. And your story changes forever. My friends, some of you have done that. Your story has changed forever. And you're not living into that story, that new story. You're living with that regret. You feel like that mistake defines you, holds you, keeps you in place. And I'm here to remind you that it's Easter. And He took that story and He buried it and He gave you a new one. And it's time to step up and step in to the new life that you could have. You have a lot to celebrate. Let your memories of those failures, of those difficult times, remind you of just how good our Savior is to you.